wallpaper next.
Oh, really? Good to go? You ready to go? Cool. Hey, everybody. I'm Mike, and this is Dave. We're from Caxi. We're an agency in Chicago. Just curious, I feel like I talked to a lot of people who are building products. Show of hands, who builds products versus agency? Who's on a product or for a company? And then, is everyone else agency, or is it something else? Something else. Wavering. Okay. Met one Symfony agency friend in San Francisco. What we're going to talk about is how we use Sonata Admin virtually all the time when building Symfony apps. And for us, the distinction I was going to make is that if you're what I would call building a single product, then maybe you're not thinking about how you're doing setup. But we do a lot of stuff that's sort of from scratch build, new app, and how do we do that over and over and over again successfully? And this is a product that we found works really, really well. Maybe you've used it. Anyone used this before? Easy Admin, other things like that? No? Okay, so this will be interesting. Great. Okay. So I did that one. Who are we? Caxi, Chicago. Sonata Admin is a great way to manage new entities in your Symfony app if it's something you're looking to get access to via like an admin portal. You want to be able to touch and feel it. We think it's great because it's really flexible, really powerful. And we're going to talk about when you should use it. And Dave even has a terrific demo. If you want to clone this, it's something we're going to work on in about 10 or 15 minutes on this microphone. Thank you very much. Which is on or off? On? Off? Close enough? I can just speak loudly. Ish. So feel free to do that. He's going to do a demo to get it basically, I think, from scratch, right? Yep. From nothing to we're looking at entities in the back end of something. Pretty cool. There we go. And I'm going to stop talking in a second anyway, so this will be moot. You ready to jump in?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you on?
I think so. Like Mike said, we're a Chicago-based company, mostly agency work. Myself, I've been working with Symfony and Sonata Admin for about 2.5 years, PHP for about 7 years now. We do pretty much everything in Symfony, a lot of decoupled apps with React and Angular, some Ionic things. We also do a handful of Drupal and WordPress sites, which is also pretty fun. And yeah, out of all of our projects, we only have 2 that don't use Sonata Admin that's built with Symfony. And the product that's actually in those is actually Easy Admin. Fun fact, though, one of those is actually getting removed and being replaced with Sonata Admin. So one of the big things...
I think it's great that you said you had fun doing Drupal. It's really great.
Fun with quotes. So one of the big things that we like about Sonata Admin is it's not reinventing the wheel. It's a great platform. It's very well documented for the most case. And we don't have to worry about doing a bunch of repetitive code over and over and over again. We just write a couple classes, and we get tons of value out of it.
Yeah, and if anything, I would say maybe people have experience with this. I feel like we used to do a lot of this from scratch, ad hoc, differently each time. And while it would be really, really awesome for triangular wheels to be out there in the world, it's really easy, a lot easier to just go with something that works and get you up and running. And then you get to the interesting stuff, the thing that makes your app different, that makes it powerful, that makes it more valuable for you and your customers.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, there are a couple competitors to Sonata Admin. Easy Admin probably being the biggest one, but one that's really not well known is this APY data grid. It's got a decent backing on it, but it looks like it was built in the Stone Age, unfortunately. But it seemed really cool at the time. There's also, the Symfony CRUD generation, standard tool built into Symfony, which is great for some simple things. Doesn't give you very many filters or styling or things like that, which you can build on to. But then there's Easy Admin. Easy Admin is great if you're doing really simple things with your data. So if you need to have one relationships to just show a plain entity, get that data, show it, edit it, delete it. That works pretty great. The filters are probably the strongest point that it's lacking in. They give you a search bar that really kind of just does a plain search across all the fields. You can't really set up specific filters for multiple properties on that entity. One of the other things that we had issues with in Easy Admin is a lack of security. They don't really give you ways to lock certain entities to certain ACLs or roles, where Sonata Admin actually is basically all ACLs and role-based architectures. So as we said, Sonata Admin is a huge time saver. we have a nice little Symfony package that we put together that has Symfony and Sonata Admin, all of our common bundles. We just clone it. We basically have a functioning website that we can show our clients within 15, 20 minutes, and they love it. The other great thing is that it actually has a pretty big community. They have 500 contributors. They're committing updates and fixes pretty much every day, new releases out almost every week. And yeah.
Hey, putting us on the spot, have we open sourced that? Is that something you can go download? The bundle of all the stuff together that we've done?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I can throw that
It's on
up.
the Kaxi GitHub?
Yeah. So some of the key concepts about Sonata Admin. It's basically all you need to do to get up and running is write some YAML and PHP code. Everything that you need to do to get your forms and your basic CRUD elements showing is using your Symfony form builder. It supports pretty much any Doctrine implementation you want. So if you're using ORL, Propel, the PHP CR, it's pretty much got you covered. There's even a couple obscure ones that other people built for some MS SQL databases, which is kind of fun. And yeah, the last thing that I wanted to hit on was a lot of people have this notation that Sonata Admin's complex and they're afraid of it because it's got a lot of features to it and they don't want to get into it because it looks scary. It's really not. There's a couple lines of code to get it running and you basically have an admin dashboard that you can start filling out with some cool things. So some of the strengths. Little setups required. It's a couple lines of code, like I said. You can do some pretty crazy stuff with it, which we'll see a little bit later in the presentation. It works great for small projects. If you need to have a CRUD set up for 2 entities, it's fine. If you have something that has 30 or 40 entities, it'll work just as well too. It's nice standard centralized code that runs through everything. It's easy to debug if you have issues that come up. Yeah. One of the other cool things is you can actually build your entire app with Sonata Admin. So we had a client that wanted a portal to manage all their clients and projects and programs and languages and all kinds of things like that. And they wanted a custom app built, but we just built it with Sonata Admin and got them running out of the door in probably about half the time. This is really cool. And then it uses your knowledge of the Symfony components and form and twig and everything that you need to know to get your admins running. Some of the weaknesses, though. The overhead is real. It is a big, beefy application. There's about 300 dependencies in it, so it does pose some risk there. We did have a couple issues of some dependencies not working because of old versions, but they're releasing new versions now with 4.0 and 4.1 coming out soon. So it's getting a little bit better. And then some of their internal documentation is lacking. If you're trying to do anything that's not like out of the box Sonata Admin and trying to get into like their data grids or their block bundles, something that's really behind the scenes to kind of build your own features with that, they do have some missing information, but it is getting better. It definitely is getting better. So from here, let's program all the things. We're going to cover installation, some configuration. We're going to create our service definitions and some admin classes, and maybe even look at some custom styling. So let's go into that. Okay, so I have a basic Symfony application set up. It's, I believe, running 3.2, something like that. But we're just going to take a look at it and kind of get into basically what you need to get going. First things first, our composer dependencies. We just need to make sure we include the admin bundle and the ORM bundles. This just enables pretty much the admin functionality and then the database functionality. Once we get those installed, I already have them installed because the internet was a little shady this morning and I didn't trust it to not work during the demo. After that, we can go ahead and get our bundles added to our app kernel. all this is pretty well documented in their documentation as well. And then we just need to add a couple YAML configurations for the block bundle, which we'll take a look at in a second. And Sonata Admin doesn't actually need to have anything required in your configuration to get it up and running. It's pretty much all out it gets you out the door pretty much right away. The last thing you need is just set up basically where you want your admin to show up. If you want to use admin as your prefix, it's pretty much all of this is standard out of the box stuff, so we can go from there. So what do we get? That's not what I want. What do we get out of the box? This is what we get out of the box. It's a big blank white screen with some menus on it. And it's actually really simple to start getting into our admin classes. It's a pretty cool thing because I found this out last night at about 9:30 to generate your admin. So instead of having to write all the code by yourself, you have some nice commands. You can just run your bin console sonata admin generate, and you can start filling out your classes. So I already have a user entity set up, so we're just going to start with that. So we just provide our model. Our bundle looks right. The admin class is basically the class that it's going to create that's going to contain all of our fields that are going to be showing. We can generate a custom controller for it. We don't need to. If we want to have any kind of custom actions for that specific entity, we can do that. And then we're going to say, yeah, we want to let it create a YAML configuration and basically tell it what configuration we need to run, and then an ID for that service. And there we go. That's it. You created an admin. So if we go back here, we now have an admin class. And my laptop just froze.
It was doing so well up to now, right?
It was. It really was.
Try unplugging my
I think it's just Sam from Cisco. It doesn't do this in Chicago.
Maybe your computer only works till 5.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Central?
what it is.
Yeah. So again, kind of getting back to like what we, as this thing comes back to life, the thing that we really find really helpful is that we're sort of in the business of building a lot of new apps from scratch fast. So, kind of, if you think about it, like you said, we can get this app, like a Symfony app with this running, up and running in about 15 minutes, which means all the stuff that we want just to kind of as the baseline, that's ready to go almost right away. So if if you find yourself, even if you're just kind of doing like sandbox stuff, you want to try something new, this gets you ready so quickly, and you're able to interact with and create. If you watched in there, the classes for these new entities are being created just in that same old kind of Symfony command line structure that you're used to. But then you've got all the security and the role-based stuff that you want on the back end, just kind of happening along with Sonata, which is really, really helpful. And I think we'll get this later in the presentation, but Easy Admin is kind of maybe a little bit lower barrier to entry if you want to kind of in that sandbox kind of getting around and playing with it setting. But it seems like every time we've used it, as soon as the app grew or needed more power, or needed more things to hook into it, it kind of got us kind of pinned into a corner. So that's just our experience with it. If people are using either one of those or not. I think we asked, and there weren't too many users of either product when we started. But it's something that kind of we find really, really helpful. Kind of having that entity building tool and access tool, is that something people run into and what they're working on? Is this helpful as we're kind of working with tech difficulties? We back?
Maybe.
There we go.
Okay.
All right, take two.
Let's hope that this didn't just break everything.
Nothing ever goes wrong in demos, by the way. Everyone knows that, right? First time ever.
Yeah, so I'm just going to take a couple steps back because it does look like it crashed somewhere in between creating that command. Okay. So let's try recreating this. I'm just going to run bin console. Okay. Doesn't look like it crashed this time. Okay, cool. There we go.
All right, let's hear it for Dave, because that's pressure, right? Your stuff crashes in the middle. You gotta get the get force, you know? Come on. Now we're running.
All right. So as we can see, we have our Sonata Admin here. It creates a nice little dashboard. You can see pretty much all your entities at a glance. You also have various menus to actually get to it. It's like 3 different places you can get to everything, which is a little redundant, but it works. So yeah, what happened? Why is this here? So if we go into our code, we can see it created a couple files. We now have a user admin class. We now have a service. And the routing should be already done, yeah. Okay, so the way that Sonata Admin works is it works with a service definition and an admin class. Not that one. I lost which one I was on. So the admin class just has an ID for the, or a name for that service. You define what admin class it's referring to. It'll take a couple arguments. 2 out of the 3 can be null if necessary. The code basically is what is the name of that class. So if you have multiple admin classes that you map to the same entity, you can specify a specific code so you can have one version showing for a certain group of users or different ones showing for a different group of users. The second parameter is required. It's the user, the entity itself. The third one can also be null, but it's the generated controller, or if you want to generate yourself, in case you want to have any custom actions for that specific entity. The last thing we need to do is just define a tag with the name of Sonata Admin, what manager type that it is, the group that it belongs to, and the label. One of the things I don't like is it just groups everything in admin. So I'm just going to change that, and it's going to start looking better already. So from here, we can add new, we can list, we can get into all our data. So right here, we just have a FOS user list of profiles. Although, I don't think it's really a great idea to be showing their password and salts. And there's a couple extra fields that are really unnecessary. So let's just go in there and clean this up. So in the admin class itself, basic class, it extracts the abstract admin. And then there's 4 functions. We have a configure data grid, a configure list, configure form, and configure show. What these do is just allow you to add which fields you want to show for your admin class. So in this case, let's just move the ID up. Let's take out the canicles. Let's take out the password and salts. And let's do that one too. I did the wrong one, didn't I? I did. So now our list looks a little cleaner. So basically, right out of the box, a couple lines of code, we have a fully functioning admin panel to CRUD any kind of data that we want. Some cool things that they give you out of the box is you can sort by columns. Wonderful feature. We can go into and show and edit and delete some of our entities. We'll get into that in a second. But we can do things to this homepage. So if we wanted to go in and make some of these fields editable from this page, we can just go in. We can just tell it to be null because we don't actually need to have the types there. It'll just automatically assume what it is. And we'll just say this one's editable. So we come back to there. Now we can just go ahead and say, no, you don't have access anymore. One of the cool things that you get out of Sonata Admin as well is you also get batch actions, something that you don't get with Easy Admin. So if you wanted to go in here for some reason and just delete all your users, you can delete all your users. Unfortunately, that also deletes my user as well.
We recommend doing that in production.
It's very fun. It's very, very fun. Okay, so we're back in. My users are back. So let's go in, take a look at some of these actions. So we have a show field, and it's also just using all the form or all the properties that are in your entity displayed on the screen. We can go in and create templates that will make this look a little better if we want to have like special things show up in here. But for the most part, in most of our cases, we just show the the standard set of features that come out of it. Just go in here, change up these, make them look a little bit cleaner, and we're good to go. So now we have a really simple user. We can also go in, edit. We can change whatever the fields that we want. I don't think we should change a person's ID. So let's make this not editable. And it's as simple as that. We can go in there and change names. If there's any kind of validator set up on your entities, it'll pull all that metadata in and show those requirements here. We can also change the way that this panel looks. So if we wanted to go in here and clean this up a little bit, because that huge wide panel doesn't really look great, we can pass CSS right to it. And there we go. Pretty much you can do that for whatever field you want. If you wanted to have your username and email on the same line, you can just provide it whatever class you want, and you're good to go. So one of the things that Sonata Admin doesn't do out of the box for you is if you have associations to other entities, it won't put any of those fields on here. You will have to do them yourself. But it's not that bad. There's actually a couple different ways you could do it. So what I'm going to do is just turn on a couple of these, and then we can get to go and just see what they do. So in our user admin class, I'm going to create another with. Just gives me another panel, and we're going to call this profile. We're going to end that. So the first way we're going to show off is you can actually use the dot operator for here. So if we wanted to go in and add a profile, first name, we can go in there. Oh, I forgot something. You got to end what you start. Where was that? Oh. So now we're going to take a look at our entity. So in this user, I have a profile, and it's just a one-to-one association. We also have it just set up to cascade persistence, so we don't have to worry about any kind of the cascading effects in Sonata Admin. We can all do that through Doctrine. You can also do that with Sonata Admin. You have full access to the pre-persist, the post-persist, the pre-update and post-updates, pretty much anything you want to do for that entity, you can do it directly in that class. So that was adding our first name. I don't like that it says profile first name, but we can get to that. You just say null, and this is all basic form types. And then let's just add in a couple of the extra ones. So we have a first name, we have a last name, and we have some notes. last name, name. So yeah, this is the first way to do it. We can go in there and just use our dot operator to get the entity or the properties off that other entity. And then let's add one more field. In this case, it's going to be another association to an entity. So we're going to add a profile.gender, and we're going to see what it does. It's just a text field. It's not what we want, but we can fix that. Okay, so now we have our gender showing up. Really simple to do, a lot of features right out of the box. And it's a pretty great tool. So now let's get back into the presentation. And that's, I'm gonna figure out where we left back off. There we go. Okay, so something that I'm not gonna be showing is custom styling. So for one of our projects, we had a client come to us saying that they had a platform already built. It was a CodeIgniter project, and they wanted some filtering and some sorting and labeling and all that fun stuff. We don't necessarily do CodeIgniter, but we said, hey, we have an idea. Let's build a Symfony application with Sonata Admin so you can get all your data that you want, and we'll run them in series. So we have a Sonata or Symfony application that handles the routes that Symfony is in control of, primarily for the two actions that we have for the property and spaces and users, and then everything else just dumps into CodeIgniter. So we took their styles and with a couple Twig templates, rewrapped everything that Sonata had to offer into what they wanted their product to look like. Some of the cool other things we can do is build an application around Sonata Admin. This was our big client that had a ton of data. It was a .NET application that we're slowly rebuilding with Symfony, and they have a lot of data. And it's all over the place, but Sonata Admin handles it pretty well. We have entities set up for everything that's in their database, and it lets us do what we need to do to get it done. So some of the gotchas. We found this one out recently, that multiple primary keys is not supported, which is a really weird thing to have to say.
You shouldn't have to say that in one sentence. I think Dave said that the system he's working on is older, was from before you were born.
Yeah, the system was made before I was born.
Yeah. So how that happened, we don't know, but it breaks our app.
Yeah. Some of the other things that might be a turnoff is Sonata Admin within 4.1 is going to require PHP 7.1, and I believe it's Symfony 3.3 now. But going forward, they're deprecating all their older supported versions and requiring it to be this. And then my biggest issue with it is there's no logout button in their standard templates.
You can make it. But
You can make it. I get it, but it's annoying to have to go in there, but it's in our standard repository now. All right. So that was basically the end of it. Did anyone have any questions? Yeah.
I noticed you used Symfony 3.2.6, I believe.
Yeah, and this one it was, yeah.
Is it compatible with 3.3 or not?
That one, I believe so, but things can change. We found out last night that they were changing the requirements on all of their products to be 7.1 and above. So it's hard to say at this point.
Yeah, but at this point, if we're going to spin up a 3.3 version of the Symfony, is it going to work okay with the latest?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I saw one over here. Yeah.
I've seen that you are typing all the arrays by hand. Is there like any plugin support for that? Because that was my biggest issue with Sonata a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything newer in the
Like autocomplete in an IDE kind of thing?
Yeah, because like
Right, how do you know to type that? Right.
You have to
Yeah.
remember that.
Yeah, nothing that I was aware of. I kind of had a similar issue to that. I didn't like how repetitive it was and all the fields that are basically just copied and pasted in each of the functions. I was hoping to have this ready for this presentation, but I started working on an annotation bundle for Sonata, so you can just, in your entity class, not have to worry about any YAML, any PHP. You just provide an annotation in your entity for what you want to show up in which fields. Unfortunately, it's not ready, though. Okay. Very soon. All right, was there anything else? No?
Cool.
All right,
Thanks, everybody.
thank you very much.